Hi there, it's Fergal McGovern from VisibleThread, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to this webinar by Jeff Diallo and Pete Brandano from VMware. Jeff and Pete can say a lot about what they do, but effectively their roles are solution architects for VMware lifecycle. And today they're going to be sharing a little bit about how they're using VisibleThread in the context of the overall contract lifecycle. Just a quick couple of notes on operational matters. We expect the call will last about 40-45 minutes. There will be some Q&A time at the end, so we'll hopefully get some good answers or questions on that. So as you're looking at what Jeff and Pete are talking about, if you have any questions, please do use the chat facility, which is in the GoToWebinar panel on the side. We will make the recording available over the next couple of working days, so stay tuned on that, and we'll mail you once that's available. And we'll also have the slides available as well. As I mentioned, Q&A at the end, so please do feel free to pop any questions. And there is a poll at the very end, so we're really anxious to understand how you got value from the webinar. So if you would take a couple of seconds, it's just a 3-question poll, very simple. We'd appreciate that as well. Okay, great. Well, without further ado, let me welcome Pete and Jeff, and over to you guys.
Great, thanks, Fergal. As Fergal said, this is Jeff Diallo and Pete Brandano from VMware. I wanted to give you a quick overview of VMware. Was founded in 1998 and about $6 billion company in 2014. We're a publicly traded company. We have about 18,000 employees worldwide, 500,000 customers, headquartered in Palo Alto, California. That's a picture of our main building in Palo Alto. We're a global company. We deal with virtualization and cloud technologies. So it's a software company, and it's a lot of our responses to proposals deal with a lot of technology and solutions that way, and that's what Pete and I work on. And I'm going to turn it over to Pete to talk about our organization.
Thanks, Jeff. This is Pete Brandano. I wanted to tell you a little bit about our group to kind of set the stage for what we do here. I'm sure that there's probably a lot of people in the audience that are a part of similar groups. Within VMware, a few years back, VMware recognized the need to put together a dedicated team to help with the pursuit and capture of large strategic opportunities within the federal, state, and local government, education, and healthcare, to pursue and then hopefully capture wins within these long-term, 18-month or so life cycles for, typically government contracts. So our job is to work with the end customers to help to educate them on what it is that VMware does in the pursuit phase through things like white papers and stuff like that. And then on the capture phase, we receive the government request for information and request for proposal. We very carefully and systematically parse those, and then put together responses that, in hopes that we maximize our P-win. We don't often prime these opportunities. We usually support prime contractors, typically like large systems integrators and the like. So for a long time, it was quite simple for a company like ours to just, provide a bill of materials and, and say thank you and move on to the next opportunity. But those days are long gone. To be able to compete now within, at least in these sectors, you really have to go the extra mile and support these systems integrators and provide, basically do their homework for them and show that our product does truly meet the requirements. Because as an engineer within this domain, there's nothing worse than being disqualified for technical noncompliance, for example. So we've been working with VisibleThread now for a few months, and it's proven to be a huge help for us. We have 6 capture managers. Each of them are aligned to subsegments, so state and local and education, national security and healthcare, additional national security agencies, and then DoD and civilian. Within those 6 capture managers, they all hold a top 10 list of opportunities. So at all times, our small group is responsible for tracking and capturing 60 opportunities. And within that group, there are 3 of us that are technical program managers, essentially systems architects, So we split those 60 opportunities between us. So we're tracking about 20 at a time. And anybody that works in this domain knows that that's quite a large number of RFPs and RFIs to track. So it's practically impossible without a tool like VisibleThread, and that's really been a lifesaver for us. So I think we can move to the next one. So just to set the stage, sorry about the wall of text here. I just wanted to let you know how we did things before VisibleThread and what we're doing now and how it's improved our product. So we, in the past, we used the Shipley method, and I'll go into that in the next slide, but we would have a kickoff deck, a blue team deck that outlined the opportunity, why it was important to our company specifically and how we could add value to make the case for a go, no go. We'd also produce a technical requirements traceability matrix for larger opportunities and more strategic opportunities, because those are, very time consuming to make, right? We've got to decompose the RFP, and then for each requirement, provide proof that we can meet the requirement with specific products and services. So those, we would manually build those, and they would take, days to, even a week sometimes to put something like that together for a large opportunity. So since VisibleThread, we've added a number of products to this package. As part of the blue team deck, we always have to produce a SWOT analysis of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. With VisibleThread, what we've done is we've actually created dictionaries that will allow us to parse out the RFPs and identify areas within the RFP that might speak to our strengths or potentially weak areas for ourselves, opportunities, and then areas where our competitors, for instance, might have a stronger story. So that's helped us to quickly parse the RFPs and build these SWOT tables that were normally done manually. We do customer language discovery as a best practice. We always want to be speaking back to the customer in their language. So if they're using terms that we don't typically use, we want to know that. So we do use the tool to parse and generate a list of their typical language. And then we've created a number of additional requirements traceability matrices. So VisibleThread's automated our technical matrix, which again, it turns days or even a week into really minutes now that we have a dictionary. And because it's so fast, we were able to create additional dictionaries and traceability matrices for pricing, contracts and legal, management and delivery, proposal, and then we roll it all up into a master RTM for our capture manager, and I'll show you that. And then finally, our proposal manager is able to do structure analysis to make sure that we're sticking to our original outline, readability analysis, and acronym analysis to improve the overall quality of our end product. And finally, one of the creative things that we're doing is when we produce a final RTM, especially if it's a winning RTM, we pass our final document back through VisibleThread, and we use it to tag the content for various products and services that we sell. And that way we're able to reuse the content in the future. We use it as a way to be able to catalog our existing content. Okay, move on. Next slide, please, Jeff.
Yep. So you should see the fishbone.
So we use the Shipley method for pursuit and capture. It's a standard process used within government typically. And this is just a diagram that shows the work products that we are producing with VisibleThread for our pursuit and capture opportunities. So you can see there in the very beginning, in the early phases before the, maybe in draft RFP phase or in the RFI phase, as we start to get information on the opportunities, that's when we can generate the automatic SWOT that I mentioned and do the customer language discovery, the early planning work basically. And then as we get drafts of the RFPs, we can then begin to build our requirements traceability matrices. And we do that, as I said, in all those various domains. And we improve those as we get new drafts from the government. So you can see in each phase, we may make updates to those RTMs. We also have draft responses in each phase, as anyone would. So pink draft, red draft, and so forth. And we pass those drafts through the structure analysis, readability, and acronym analysis at each phase, so that as we get through each gate, our product is getting better and better, and we can see that. And then you can see there at the end there, we finally do the past performance RTM that I mentioned. Can move on. So just a few more setting the stage, and then we'll get into what we're actually doing. So what we've done is VisibleThreads allowed us to create a package, a work package for each opportunity that's consistent and standardized. So as I mentioned previously, we create a various RTMs, requirements traceability matrices for proposal, pricing, contracts and legal, management and delivery, which is basically professional services, and then technical, so basically our products. And we've created 5 dictionaries to be able to generate these RTMs, and we've named them with a standard naming convention. So that's what's shown there.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out here that we're going to use the responsibility matrix function to be able to do this, and we'll show that to you as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So we're not using the standard compliance matrix, as you'll see. So what we've done to develop the dictionaries, as you saw, we have, in this case, we're showing a master contract and legal dictionary. You can see there that there are a number of terms. We then generate out, after we create the dictionary, we were exporting the dictionary into Excel and modifying the categories so that in the sub-dictionaries, they have individual subcategories that you'll see. For instance, legal review might be one subcategory with its own terms in it. We then took that, we stripped off all of those subcategories, and we changed them to just simply the word contracts and legal, and we imported those into a new master dictionary that was a roll-up. And we did that with each of these sub-dictionaries so that we created one large dictionary that gives us essentially a 10,000-foot view for the capture manager's purposes to identify very quickly where are the contracts and legal issues, where are the technical issues that we might have. So that when we put that blue team deck together, we have a quick, easy way to find those things.
And Pete, this is Fergal here. Just a quick word for anybody in the audience who's maybe not as familiar with VisibleThread as we all are. The purpose of a dictionary is really to itemize the number of search terms that you're looking for within an RFP or within a contract or within multiple documents. So if you're, for instance, looking for the period of performance, you might have some terms like period or performance or time frame. They would be search terms, and these dictionaries really hold those search terms, and the result then will be an output that allows you itemize every occurrence of that particular term. So again, dictionaries and search dictionaries are really, they do a job. They do a job of review for a particular person with a particular lens in mind.
Great.
And the other thing I'll add, yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I'll add too is we wanted to maintain the root set of terms to search with, as well as building the master one too. So if somebody wanted to use and just only search on particular subject matter terms, that they'd have that concept dictionary there as well, or whatever dictionary to use. So that's why we kept both.
So as a result, this slide just shows that concept that we have a master work packages dictionary, and you can see in the image to the left there, you can see the proposal, management, and delivery pricing, and the numbers next to it indicate the number of terms that are found underneath those categories. And then you can see on the right-hand side, the contracts and legal sub-dictionary has its own categories defined that further, it basically gives us a lower level of resolution into the RFP itself. And as Jeff said, that's so that we can give those to our contracts and legal team, for example, and they can get into the weeds on that subject. Do you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, that's just a little in between.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so this is just an example of some of the language discovery that I mentioned. So early on, we run this language discovery using the built-in VisibleThread capability to do so. And you can see here that we're looking at a Department of Defense RFI, and they're using a term DoD joint governance. So that one is somewhat unique, and we want to make sure that if we're talking about management and governance across various DoD domains, that we use the word joint governance specifically. So this is an example of a word that we'd want to flag, and this is something that may end up in our blue team kickoff messaging to the writers to say, make sure you're using these terms. So this is, and I'm going to go through these ones relatively quickly. This is just screenshots, examples of the output now. And so we've created the dictionaries with the search terms, and we've now run this against an RFI document. For in this case, it was a remote mobile user RFI, and this is the master rollup RTM that I mentioned. So you can see that the columns in this responsibility matrix are contracts and legal, management and delivery, pricing, proposal, and technical. You guys may be using this feature of VisibleThread to do work share. So various companies, we've kind of turned it a little bit and used it specifically to look at domains within the RFP. We find that to be very helpful. So again, this is where the capture manager will identify potential issues like with contracts and legal or so forth. If you want to move to the next one.
So the other thing to point out, the phases within our modified Shipley process down at the bottom shows that this would be used at not only the blue phase, pink team, red team, and gold team, that these particular roll-ups would be used at that particular point in our process.
Mm-hmm. And this one and most of these we're typically using for internal documentation to do our own, compliance monitoring and making sure that we're answering the mail completely. But we've also found that these are extremely valuable as value adds to our systems integrator or prime partners. Typically we do that with the technical roll-up, but there's nothing holding us back from using these others as well. So in this case, you see the management and delivery. The categories here are related to professional services. So again, the professional services team would take this shred of the RFP and work on it, and identify areas that they may need to put particular emphasis on, or again, potential problem areas or gaps that they need to fill.
And Pete, I might just add, if we can just stay on this again for the purpose of you might just revert back to the prior slide. Thanks, Jeff. The columns here. So what this view is it's a report in Excel, and each column designates a certain thing. So the column that's mostly of interest is the content column, which is a little to the right of the midpoint here. That's a decomposed shred of the actual RFI or RFP or indeed any document. And the color coding there is flagging the terms that we found. So the word engineering in that first row was found in that column, therefore it's color coded and shaded. And on the right, the columns to the right of that say, well, since we found the word engineering, then the engineering team, which is what that column is referring to, need to pay particular attention to that particular piece of the contract. So those X's really give you an insight as to who needs to start to pay attention to which parts of the RFI or RFP. And the benefit of all of this is that when you get to a substantially bigger document of 100 pages, 200 pages, whatever it might be, people will invariably not pay as much attention past page 20 or 30 as they would on page 2. So you have this kind of inertia and human challenge, which of course, you're fried, you've done a 70-hour work week, you'll miss stuff. So the beauty about this approach is that it's really, really fast to get the outputs in this report format. And secondly, you won't miss nearly the same level of stuff that would typically be missed through no fault of anybody's. It's just a human issue.
So this is more of the same. Again, you'd see the categories have changed now. This one is particularly important for legal, of course. So we found this to be especially helpful because it's been an extremely manual process to go through and search for specific terms manually, and it's just an area where human error could really get us into a lot of trouble. If you think about things like liquidated damages, for example, where our company could be held, responsible financially for failures on the program. We want to make sure that some of those real hot button terms are defined and that they're flagged immediately. So we've done that in our dictionary, and when we run this, it takes seconds to run, and we can automatically filter down this output by, for example, legal review, and we can ship that right off to legal and make sure that we're in good shape so that we don't end up accidentally getting ourselves in trouble. Similar pricing, the pricing team, again, typically does all of this manually. They don't have a lot of time. They're working on a lot of projects. So this helps them to identify the requirements that are around pricing, which are usually very specific. likewise proposal. I don't think there's much more to say for this one. Okay, and then I want to spend a little time on this. This is the one we were putting together manually, and you can see here that it has a much, there are a lot more columns here. We happen to have a pretty broad portfolio of products, so we want to make sure that when we look at an RFP, we're not biasing ourselves toward a specific product. And as we grow our portfolio, we'll be adding columns to this. So we can't be experts at everything. We're generalists within our organization. And so we've been able to put together these search dictionaries that flag terms that were given to us by subject matter experts in each of these product areas. So what this tool is now doing for us is it's identifying requirements that we likely would have missed. We're human, and these things, are hundreds to thousands of requirements long. So this gives us a really nice way to confirm that not only that we've tracked for compliance, that we can actually meet the requirement, but that we haven't missed a requirement that might be an opportunity for us as a company. So that's been fabulous. And one of the things we've learned is that this generates in minutes, just like all the rest, and then it still takes quite a long time for us to manually go through and identify, how we're going to meet requirements, right? So we add a column to this, and we write up specifically how our product can meet the requirement or not. And if it can't meet a requirement, we identify third-party products that might be able to do that. And our goal there is to go the extra mile, right, for the primes. What we found is that without even adding that additional data, if we get on a call with the primes initially and we walk through this, it's somewhat unheard of for a vendor to go to that level. And it's something that we're proud of, and it's helped us to build real partnerships with our SI partners. Going beyond a vendor, and they've come to recognize us as a pursuit and capture organization that will go that extra mile for them. So this is something that's really added a lot of value for us.
Yeah, and this is something that we used to do manually by running the compliance matrix, but then add additional columns and then try and go through manually and figure out which one of the products. So this is definitely, when we sat down and looked at the responsibility matrix, we realized that we could actually turn its function on its head in a way so that would actually make it a lot easier for us to do. So that's the reason I bring up that is because they're main intents of some of these functions. If you think about it a little bit, it's flexible enough to be able to use the tool in different ways that will also save you time and effort.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And for systems integrators that might be on the call, you can imagine doing something similar to what we've done here and for multiple vendors. So you might do it for your hardware and your software and so forth. And you can still then get the benefit of the responsibility matrix, or the work share breakdown, as well as the technology breakdown. So now we're going to shift over to a demo. Jeff's going to walk through that.
Great. So this is the initial login screen from VisibleThread Docs, and basically the Docs product is the product that we use. We've created a folder here for today, and I've pre-populated with some documents in it already, and I'm going to show you a couple features. One of the first features I'm going to show you is creating our requirements traceability matrix using the responsibility matrix. But first, I'm going to explain what I did. We took our request for proposal, we broke it into 4 different components. Sometimes you may have one or multiple documents. This one was one large document. We broke it into 4 separate documents. There's the SAO statement of work piece, the bid requirements, which kind of talks about what you need to do to put the bid together, enrollment process for this particular request for proposal, and then kind of the terms and conditions. And as Pete was walking through, that we've built these master dictionaries of search terms. And so each one of these documents, I can assign a separate dictionary or the same dictionary to the whole folder if I wanted to. At the folder view, I could actually put a default dictionary in that folder. But what I did is I went through for the SAO document, I went through, and let me come over here on the quality analysis side. I assigned it our master technical dictionary. And basically that's the concept terms that we're interested under the technical piece. And as you can see here, that there's a bunch of terms, PSO, which is our professional services organization, and that's the category, and the terms underneath it, design, consulting, what have you. And they have a frequency of how many times that particular term, design, actually appears in this document. And so it's red, it means there's actually terms within those categories or subcategories that are found within that document. If it's gray, there's none of these terms. So for our vCenter product, none of those terms hit it. So, and likewise for the bid part 2, because I knew that was proposal requirements being how it was going to be evaluated, how you're supposed to put it together, past performance. As you can see, all these categories here are red. And again, the management has a bunch of terms under it, and it's found a certain subset of those terms, and it's highlighted those in bold, black. And then I can see how many times those are found within those. And enrollment process, again, that was a proposal type term document. And terms and conditions, I wanted to parse through that to find all the things that maybe our contracts team would be concerned about and legal would be concerned about in the T's and C's piece, right? Keep us out of trouble, keep us out of stripes. So again, found some terms, didn't find some terms in these other components, which is fine. It doesn't have to be 100%. And so now I have all 4 of these different components of that one document. I'm going to go ahead and, as we've said, we're using the responsibility matrix in a way to create our actual requirements traceability work packages. So I'm going to go ahead and create matrix for multiple documents. So I select that option, and now it's presenting me with multiple documents within that folder. It works at the folder level. And now I can pick out, okay, I know I want that one, the bid requirements, enrollment process, terms and conditions, and then I'm going to say next. I don't care about the other documents in there right now. And now it's saying, okay, you want to shred multiple documents. And I know a big shout out from Pete and I to the VisibleThread team. This is a newer feature within the tool, and we really appreciate this function because it made what we used to do a little bit easier, or a lot easier. So we're really happy about having this function, Fergal. So now it's saying, do you want to continue? Yes. And shred multiple documents. So now I have a couple options. What do I want my output format to look by? I could split the text by either a sentence or a paragraph, which means in the resultant Excel document it's going to create for me, I could have it break on, take the words within a paragraph and break it by a sentence, or leave it at paragraph level. I'm just going to leave it at the paragraph level for now. And you can play with it, tweak it, depending upon the document you're parsing through. You may want to do it at the sentence level, but for this exercise, I'm just going to do the paragraph. And then they have added a new row on dictionary hit. I'm not going to worry about that. Each term would have its own row. I'm not going to do that at this point. And the other thing too is if there was some text that you knew was going to be in the document, you don't really want it, like headers, footer terms. A lot of times there's solicitation information in the headers and footers, and you could actually put that text, copy it in here, put it in here, and it would exclude it from the search, so it's not going to hit on it. I'm not going to do that at this point for this exercise. And then I can either cancel, which I don't want to do, or generate the matrix. So I'm going to go ahead and it's going to generate the matrix. And as you can see, it's working, exporting to Excel. I've used Excel to prompt me with what I want to do with it each time. Otherwise, I could save it or open it. I'm going to go ahead and open it and make this bigger. And so now this is the results of the responsibility matrix shown, kind of like what Pete had walked through. Based upon my search terms, I've now on the bottom down here, I have part 1, which is all 4 of the documents, part 1 through part 4 on separate tabs. And it's used that dictionary of terms or concepts. And you can see here in the first column, it tells you which dictionary of it used to parse that piece. and I can see that. So now I know it's the master technical on the SAL piece, and it's separated out, and I can see the X's. I'm going to collapse it here and show all the hits. So you can see all of the columns and the terms are identified. So the X's, so I know that those are particular on the technical piece. As Pete mentioned, we broke it into our products. I can see there's all those requirements with the X's that I need to actually work with our professional services team to actually help look through and make sure that there aren't any issues with those requirements. And as I go through bid requirements, the proposal manager, you can see here there's a lot of, a lot of different components that she needs, the evaluation requirements. She can separate out each and focus on each one of the categories of requirements based upon where the X's are in columns H through M, and she can focus on that and make sure that she's not missing anything from whether it's the evaluation criteria. So as we're evaluating the documents, that make sure that those are areas that we focus on. Same thing with processes for enrolling. So again, a quick visual. Again, it pops with the new yellow background and the black text on it. It looks really good. It stands out from, and you can focus in on what is the real requirements. And then, so I can see that rather quickly on each one of these documents. And again, I can see it a quick visual on the second one here, where all the X's are, where all the terms are bolded in red and stand out, and I can actually see what's there and what the requirements are. So that's creating the RTM requirements traceability using the responsibility matrix. I could actually still go ahead and do the a regular compliance matrix if I wanted to do so. I could actually go ahead and, based on that, I could go ahead and create a compliance matrix and shred that document, or shred multiple documents as well. And I'm going to generate the matrix there with that one. And it'll now just use that one set of terms, and it'll actually do the same thing. It'll actually go through and now, instead of having the other additional columns to the right broken out, it's now using a standard, what you're most likely referenced in the past on a compliance matrix. And it's grouped, so I can quickly select on the top part here and actually collapse and see all of the requirements, what page it's on, and then what are the actual terms. And I can fill in, if I wanted to fill in comments on the right. So that's using the standard compliance matrices on the same document, using the same dictionary, finding the same set of terms. So we close that one. And then the last thing I wanted to demonstrate today quickly was the actual comparison. One of the other things that we use a lot is the ability to compare documents. So I have, often you have a draft RFP that you're looking at, or a draft document, and then you get a final document, and the customers are not always very good at identifying what's changed from one document or one version to the next version. You can also do this on your writing if you wanted to do that too, to see if somebody hasn't used track changes. So anyway, so I've got a draft section and I've got a final section of two documents, and they're basically the current state of a particular environment and help desk. And so I want to see what's changed here, so I know what I need to focus on. So down under the other tasks option here, I'm going to click compare documents. And so now again, within one folder, it works at the folder level. I can now see all the folder files that are in there. I can select the source and then the other document, the target document that I want to actually compare. And again, I also have the opportunity, if I know that text is going to be in there the same, I can exclude whatever text. I can use regular expressions to filter out things if I want to do that within the exclude text piece. But I'm just going to do a cursory compare and open, and it opens it in Excel, which is great. And so now on the interface in Excel, I can actually see, again, highlighted, my baseline document on the left and the document I wanted to match it against on the right-hand side. and I can actually see all of the content here that's been in the documents, and I can see what's been deleted or modified. And one of the things I like to do, and I also do it on the other RTMs, is to actually be able to go ahead and put a filter on, and then I can actually go now and say, okay, show me everything that's been modified. And I can actually go in and actually see directly, pretty quickly, areas of the document that were modified. So I can actually go in and see in this particular line right here, they talk about private cloud, and now they're talking about private virtualized infrastructure capability. So they've changed the meaning quite a bit from our terminology and from our understanding. So I would be able to go in and kind of understand a little bit more about what's a private cloud versus a virtualized private infrastructure, or what have I need to focus on. So it's a great function to use. I know that one of our contracts manager uses that a lot for the T's and C's piece, and she stated numerous times that it saves her 10 to 20 hours a week on being able to go through and take a look at documents to be able to make those quick checks. You can use other comparison tools, but she's by far stated this is the best feature and best compare that she's been able to find to be able to compare documents. So one other quick thing I'll show, and just kind of running off script, sorry guys. The other thing is Pete talked about the customer's terms. I have a NIST special publication. We deal with a lot of requirements that are revolved around NIST, National Institute of Standards, and they have a special publication that they put out. And I'm going to use the discovery tool here to actually go in and see, start exploring this document. So to be able to go in and understand what NIST, the way NIST described things from a cloud perspective, is the way that a lot of the federal government and state and local governments are looking to them to be able to follow what NIST says. So it's important for us to understand, for instance, here's hybrid cloud, what a hybrid cloud is and what they actually are describing as hybrid cloud. So this would allow us to go in and take a document that we've never seen before and actually go through it and start looking through it and understanding it a little bit better. Some of the themes I can search on that and structures there. So that's a key feature. And again, those are three key features that we use.
And Jeff, it's Fergal here. Just in terms of where you would tend to use the discovery capability, which is this automatic extraction of key concepts, would that tend to be upfront during the kind of the bid no bid determination, or would it tend to be more downstream in the life cycle? Or what's your sense on that?
So I think basically I would use it as we first start working with a customer and we first start having RFPs or RFIs from that particular customer to run it through to better understand what their their terminology as we start to write. And I think Pete mentioned earlier, our blue team early on, giving a list of terminology that we should have our writers focus on so that everybody's on the same page from a terms and that kind of piece. Pete, did you want to add anything there?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, no, that's right. And it's also helpful for identifying key themes at a very high level very quickly when we get the first RFIs, for example.
So one of the other things that Pete mentioned in our process is the readability analysis. And I have an example here. I was asked to look through some documents that one of our marketing people put together for messaging on a new product that we've announced is VMware Cloud on AWS. And we're trying to get the messaging out. And so what I did is I took her original document and I put it through the readability piece to function to actually determine where I should focus my time if I had a limited amount of time to actually get into the document and use on the screen here, you'll see that it's highlighting and pinpointing areas of suggestions where there's long sentences, passive language. So I went and used the annotation from this that I was able to export and actually went back and refined the documents, and there were actually 2 sets of documents. And so on this screen here, you'll see that I went through, there was a longer document and a 2-pager. And so on the right-hand side of the screen here, you'll see where the first line is the original document, and it was written at a grade 15 level. And one of the things, and we've been taking it to heart after discussions with Fergal and Fergal's team, is that, you know, our documents should be easy to read. We don't want to have the evaluator or the readers actually have to work to understand the document. So it's very important to make sure that they're crafted well. And so I went through and I used this to actually go through and update the document, and then I put it back through, and I was able to make some changes to the document, from number of long sentences, cutting it down, either breaking it into multiple sentences, do some editing. But the other thing is it has a concept of a whitelist, because some of the lengths of a word, the number of syllables in the word, will also have some impact on the readability scores. And some of the language that we have to use just based on our industry, like virtualization, optimization, microsegmentation, are quite long words. So what we've done is we've created a white list of words that we know that are going to have to be in there, and that we wouldn't be able to modify to be able to help us with that component. So as you can see, I've been able to reduce the readability scores from 15 to 11 for the first document and 13 to 10 on the other, and then also reduce some of the number of long sentence percentages and things like that. So we use this, and this is, I thought, was probably a good case to do that, because this is going to be information that's going to be shared out in kind of a marketing fashion, not just a proposal fashion. So that was how we use that function. And Pete, talk about the
Yep,
structure.
and I think we're coming up, getting close to time here, so I'll be quick about this. This is just another really great feature of the tool. Oftentimes, I'm sure, like you all, we have to distribute the work amongst numerous people, especially if it's a large document to write. And it can be difficult to, to keep people within the original outline sometimes. So what this lets you do is you can upload your outline for your document, and in some cases that outline might actually be specified by the customer or by the government. So in our case, that happens quite a bit. So we want to make sure that we don't miss a section and then end up being non-compliant and being disqualified. So we'll upload our outline to the tool, and then when we get our final outputs in each of these, pink, red, and gold team reviews, we'll run it through the tool to make sure that we haven't accidentally deleted a section or added sections that shouldn't be there. So that's what this is for. It's great. It really helps a lot. And one last thing in closing, one of the things that we found helpful, this is a new tool for us. We're a relatively small team, but growing. And there's a lot of demand within our company to learn more about VisibleThread as we've been presenting it. So we've created our own wiki internally. We use a tool called Confluence, but there are lots of them, where we've outlined our whole process. So a lot of what we've shown you today. And we've created step-by-step user guides for creating each of the dictionaries, and also for creating each of the final work packages. So this is an example of how we would generate that management and delivery package that we showed you earlier. And it shows, it says here capture manager. So this is a process that we would give to the capture manager to actually run. No problem. Sorry, I'm a little bit behind on your slides. And then here is an example of a step-by-step guide for creating a dictionary, for example, so those search terms. And we've gone through and taken screenshots and so forth. So this is, we're a big distributed team, so this we found has been very helpful to do.
Yep. And so then the last thing I'll finish up with and round out is one of the things that the tool's got a lot of great functionality and a lot of great capabilities that we've been able to capture. And again, with regards to putting kind of a processes and procedures together, we decided that we needed to kind of make some order out of anybody can create a folder, anybody can create a name of a folder, and we didn't want to have multiple folders out there for the same opportunity. So what we decided to do was come up with some naming standards and folder conventions for standards and naming conventions for being able to create folders, users, opportunities, and put some rules around it so that there's actually some structure. People can go in and find pretty quickly what they want. So on the right-hand side, you can see the strip that says documents. And basically, we're following the folder nomenclature to say, okay, if it's a civilian operation proposal or RFI or opportunity, it's civ underscore, DOD underscore, and the opportunity name. State and local, this is a good process for refining to, we had SLED and then underscore the opportunity name, but our contracts person came back and said, hey, it'd be great if you could have it separated by state. So we've changed it, updated it so it'd be by state. So all those they'll be all actually sorted that way as well, so they're easy to find. And then we did the same thing with the users. We decided that we would create a space for people to get in, play with the tool, get used to using VisibleThread, how they could actually do it. So we came up with a convention for them. It's they can have a user folder they can put in and get in and use that folder as a sandbox to try out different capabilities of VisibleThread to be able to do that. So making some order out of chaos just to kind of make sure that we put some guardrails on the road there. But anyway, that's it's a tip and trick that we thought we'd pass on to you. I think that's it. We appreciate the opportunity to present.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Jeff and Pete. Really excellent presentation and really insightful. Very, very helpful to kind of see that. We're just going to take a couple of minutes to address some questions that came up during your presentation, and if it's okay, I might just kind of address a couple of questions to you, and perhaps one or two will be for me to answer. The first question is, how long did it take for you to create those initial search dictionaries, the ones for technical and legal and so forth? What effort is involved in that?
I'll take that one. So it was iterative. I'll say that right up front. We initially, it took, we got together with the subject matter experts in each area. So we started with technical because that's what we do. And so that was a bit easier. I think we spent, I would say an hour or two just brainstorming and coming up with terms that we thought were important. And then what we did was we ran that draft dictionary against a number of RFPs. And we took a look at the end result to try to find false positives. So basically terms that were flagging requirements that were not relevant. So for example, we have a virtualized networking product. So we may have had terms in there related to general networking that were bringing up, that were flagging requirements that had nothing to do with virtual networking. So we'd go through and we'd identify those terms as being sort of in the noise. And then we'd go back to our dictionary definition and remove those terms. Similarly, we'd find a lot of false negatives. So we'd find requirements that were not flagged for a particular product, but should have been. And that was helpful in helping us to identify additional terms that should have been in the dictionary that we were missing. So then we would go back and add those into the dictionary. And I'd say we did that at least once for each of the dictionaries, and I think more than once for many. And one of the things that we've discussed quite a bit is, as time changes, terms change, and these are living documents. So we've exported our dictionaries and put them into SharePoint as a repository to keep version control on them. And we're implementing a governance process so that if someone's using a dictionary and they need additional terms for an individual RFP, for example, we've asked them to duplicate the dictionary and use a custom dictionary for that opportunity that's based on the master. And if they've found that those terms improve the quality of the dictionary overall, we've asked them to send us the changes so that we can update the master. And then we basically incorporate the changes into the master. We haven't done that yet, though, so just as a caveat.
And there would be three things that I would add to that. That was great, Pete. Would be one, understand the expectation is that it's not 100% final. That there's always going to be things that you're going to want to add to it, first of all. Second of all, making sure you can archive the dictionaries too. So if somebody accidentally changes it and you want to change it back, you can archive it and have a place to put that. We use SharePoint to backstop our repository for documents and everything else. So we've modified our process there. But the other thing I would say is a suggestion to create the initial sets of terms. You can use the discovery function too. It's a great way to actually see a great host of terms that you may be interested to help you out in that process. So that would be a way to get started.
Fantastic. Another quick question. Are you guys running it for analyzing past performance and in particular for winning past performance submissions, possibly by the discovery or elsewhere?
I can take that one, Pete. So that is something we're working on doing. But the recommendation I know is you could do that from a dictionary point of view and use the responsibility matrix to actually do that against past performance to identify which particular past performance documents, if you have them. I know one of my former employers, we had master contract descriptions that we actually had documentation for the programs, and then we could actually run the dictionary against those to identify which past performances we may or may want to use on a particular opportunity.
Fantastic. We've got time for one or two quick questions, running slightly over, but they're really good questions. How long did it take the VMware team to get up to speed to the point of running an entire proposal on VT?
Pete, I'll let you take that because I was versant in VisibleThread when I came over.
Yeah, I'll say, you know, I'm somewhat technical. I have a technical background, and I've evaluated a number of tools here and at my previous employers. And I'm not, you know, I'm not saying this because it's a VisibleThread webinar, but I found the tool to be extremely self-explanatory. I didn't have to use the manual. It's pretty straightforward to walk through if you're technical. If you're non-technical, you know, we have a small team, and I would say the majority of people on the team are non-technical. So what we did was we had a training event. A VisibleThread came out for us. That was a one-day session. We've had individuals who wanted additional training that did webinars with the VisibleThread team, and they were fantastic about providing that to us. And I'd say, you know, we all have varying levels of understanding of the process now, but we're at a point now that we've got the documented process of being able to run whole proposals through it. And I would say it's been, you know, it's been an off and on process. We haven't worked this as a full-time job, obviously. We've done it in off hours and so forth. So I'd say it's probably been a few months, but for technical, like, usability of the tool, that was, you know, hours in my case. And I think most technical people would find that. And non-technical, maybe, you know, a few days or a week or so of like, you know, training and usage.
I think we actually had one of our non-technical folks run through the actual process and procedures that we're putting together, and she was able to follow that pretty quickly and pretty easily. So I think that's helpful too. And the help documentation that's provided by VisibleThread, and there's videos out there too, will certainly enable you very quickly.
Great. This is probably best answered by myself. So the question is there a storage limit for how many documents you can upload into the tool? Is there a document size limitation? So I'll take that very briefly. The answer is there isn't, but we initially sized the repository when we deploy it as housing, or at least sized to 80 gig of disk space, which is a substantial amount of disk space, particularly when you're dealing with documents. So we estimate that will last between 3 and 5 years. It's very, very simple to expand that footprint. So there is no practical limitation on amount of content you can upload. We do recommend, though, best practice would be don't put more than 20, 30, 40 docs into a given folder, just because it can be almost information overload at that point. So it's more a human limitation as opposed to a technical limitation. Good stuff. Next question is for you guys. Has VMware used acronym tools on customer docs and proposal docs to check if authors use customer-specific acronyms?
Yes, that's a standard part of the process.
Yep. And our proposal manager is very happy to have that capability now. It was very manual before.
Brilliant. This is more a comment as opposed to a question. This is from M. Alonso. You can compare multiple past performance SOWs and current solicitation SOW in Discovery Tool to quickly find terms that are in common. So it sounds like Mr. Alonso is doing that already, which is great. Don't think there's anything else. Let me just see. just generally, thanks to you guys for doing the presentation. That's great. Somebody's asked very quickly, can you create a matrix with just regular will, shall, must terms? I'm assuming that that's a yes, certainly is a yes from our standpoint, but have you guys been using just the regular will, shall, must type threads?
We did initially.
I mean,
yeah. Go ahead, Pete.
Sorry, Jeff, you can take it.
Yeah, so we did initially.
Okay. Oh, you, Jeff.
Yeah, we did initially, but it was more important for us from a time-saving point of view to get into be able to do the requirements traceability matrix, because that's more of our bailiwick, and we've kind of expanded out from there.
I think I'll also make a comment. It's probably due to the fact that you're also not priming the contracts that often, whereas many of the people on this call may be priming and may need to do an initial kind of obligation style matrix or RTM. So using will, shall, must is, across the board, etc.
Yeah, that's actually a fantastic idea for an. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that would be a great addition if we added categories for, just for will, shall, and must, so that each of our RTMs had a column that flagged those, just to identify for us, which ones are actually mandatory and not. So thank you for that suggestion. I think that's a great improvement of what we're doing.
Right, and the good news is that there is a stock default dictionary in the tool that ships with it, which does a bunch of will, shall, must stuff. So you can do that pretty much today. Okay, excellent. Listen, thanks very much, Pete and Jeff. Superb presentation. Really appreciate the time you spent both preparing it and also presenting it today. And for everybody who had the chance to kind of join us on the webinar, thanks so much for spending some time. We know that you're all busy. The recording of the webinar and the slide deck we will make available to you. We'll be sending out a mail in the next day or two. But all I can say is thanks very much, and see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.